D.Gray-man was one of the first anime I ever watched illegally. And that's not the best statement to make, but Crunchyroll wasn't as widely available around that time, and I was in high school and didn't have money. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse, I'm just saying that's what I ended up doing. But I fell in love with the overall premise, and not just that, how honestly kind of sad it could be in a lot of places. It didn't pull its punches with sad backstories and character deaths and the suffering that the characters would go through and the desperate situations that they end up in. It was a gothic kind of story with a shonen exterior that had fun moments, but it was always a deeper thing going on behind the surface, taking place oddly enough in the 19th century during like carriages and steam locomotives and all that good stuff. There's a weirdly large amount of advanced technology behind the surface as well, as you have this group known as the Black Order, an affiliate of the church, who uses the power of these things called innocence, these holy artifacts, in order to gain a variety of different weapons and powers and stuff, in order to battle against this dark existence known as the Noah family, who were said to be reincarnations of Noah and his 12 apostles, and the reincarnation of Noah himself, I guess, is the Millennium Earl, who looks like this goofy Eggman looking guy in a top hat, but he's also the most sinister mofo in existence, as he takes humans who have departed this world, makes contracts with their loved ones in order to have them resurrected as these unholy abominations called Akuma, and then they end up wearing their loved one's skin as a shell in order to power themselves up. It is the most wrong thing possible. And I remember the first story that I was introduced to this concept, and I remember just being horrified. And we're not even introduced to the rest of the Noah at first. We're just introduced to the Earl and the variety of Akuma that he has at his disposal. And these things are terrifying, and they all have different levels, and each level is more powerful than the last. You never want an Akuma to level up because they become insanely strong. Like, geez, the Akuma are such broken entities, but nothing is more broken than the Noah. The Noah are terrifying beings because they can destroy innocence, and they have these power source called dark matter that is just able to create and control the Noah, these demon-like creatures. And so are introduced to this kid named Alan Walker, who was this disciple of one of the greatest members of the Black Order, one of their top tier people called General Cross Martin, who has gone missing within the storyline. And in order to kind of hunt him down and stop the Millennium Earl, because Alan kind of messed up and made a deal with the Earl once when he was very young. You know, he has a vendetta against the Earl. But oddly enough, his power seems to be very similar to the Earl's once it starts to get upgraded as it goes along. But he ends up joining the English branch of the Black Order, and he's introduced to all the people there. He goes on various different missions with the members of that Black Order. A lot of camaraderie and all that good stuff. You know, he's introduced to Lena Lee, who is the sister of the leader of the English branch, and she has this awesome boot abilities, just high flying, high kicking abilities, quick mobility. Alan has this really messed up arm that has innocence embedded in it that can transform into like this massive claws or a freaking gun. Like it's very versatile. And then you have Kanda, who has this cool demon sword that's able to send out these monsters with each swing. Some very cool abilities, honestly speaking. And in terms of how it's portrayed, the anime really does a fabulous job of how it portrays a lot of the action. Not to say that the manga is bad, it just gets unclear sometimes. And that's always kind of the downside to some manga. Sometimes you get lost in the visuals and you're not sure what exactly is going on. on, but then you watch the anime and it's just like, oh, okay, now it's very clear. And there are various missions that they all go off on. You got missions with Alan and Kanda going off and facing down some Akuma here and there. You get into some very deep storylines that really show that the Black Order isn't the best, as they do some kind of unscrupulous things here and there. That it really goes to show you that the Black Order isn't a really good guys for the most part. There's some really goofy stuff in the beginning about the science section, which is pretty fun. It's great to be introduced to them, especially Johnny. He really becomes a mainstay of the science division and a really important character going forward. There's Rewind City arc where you're introduced to Miranda Lotto, who has this very sad story, and it's just such a sweet character altogether. And her transformation from her standard appearance to being a member of the Black Order, as we are introduced to her innocence, is actually pretty awesome. But that story arc was pretty phenomenal because the way her powers work is both a blessing and a kind of a curse, because it leaves you kind of stuck in time, but that doesn't mean you're unharmed when you're stuck in time. So there's some tragic stuff to that. You're also introduced to one of the Noah Road Camelot, who is a very sadistic little girl, but she's more than just a little girl. One of the generals, General Yeager, are taken out, which is pretty sad, and we're introduced to the Bookmen, who are chroniclers of the Black Order, one of which is Lavi. I love Lavi. Lavi was one of my favorite characters just because of the way that his power worked, because he could just wield this massive hammer that was able to dish out all these various different powers and ability. Really cool stuff. We also have the Vampire of the Old Castle arc, which introduces one of my favorite characters, I would say that a lot, of Aleister Crowley III, who is such a sympathetic character, but he's a vampire essentially, and Alan and Lavi are roped into helping to try to take him down, and once you learn the exact nature of his character, it's a very fascinating direction that they take things. It's a very sympathetic direction for the character. You also get introduced later on in the Order in Crisis arc to Tiki Mick, one of the Noah. So yet another Noah is introduced, and they're really going full swing into hunting down exorcists and eliminating them left and right, as Kanda loses one of his teammates, and it gets really bad. A lot of characters fall. And you also learn that the dead of the Black Order can't be sent back to their families, because if the people were to mourn, then that would just invite the Earl to try to resurrect them, and then you'd be fighting your allies. It's the despair at the way that the Millennium Earl works. It's so terrible. There's also an anime filler arc called Lulubel's Attack, which introduces the Noah Lulubel, who is actually in the series. She is an actual character. And I kind of like that they introduced her a little bit early in the anime, because you got to kind of know the character before she just kind of pops up in the manga, almost kind of out of nowhere to a certain degree. You also get shown what can happen to some exorcists should they kind of become something called a fallen one, where your innocence takes you over completely and you just start raging out of control. So it really does show the dangers of innocence, and that's in the Suman Dark arc. But it's after that whole encounter that Alan comes face to face with Tiki Mick, and it seems like Tiki Mick ends Alan right then and there. It's some dark stuff, because it was Suman Dark who actually had betrayed the Order and sold them out to the Noah in order to save his own skin. But they end up retrieving Suman Dark's innocence, so that it can be passed on to someone else. You then get the Edo and Asia branch arc, where a lot of exorcists head to Edo, and Alan tries to repair his broken innocence after Tiki Mick had pretty much destroyed it utterly. You're introduced to some pretty cool characters like Bakchang and Four from the Asia branch. You actually get to see a level 3 Akuma for the first time, and this thing is freaking terrifying. Lena Lee goes all out in the fight, and she pushes her innocence to its limit to the point where she's just not able to walk after the battle. It is an amazing high-flying fight, and honestly, with the way that the series was going, I wasn't sure if she would survive it. There are some allusions to Alan having some kind of relation to the Noah. We were introduced to Anita, who is a friend of Cross Martin, and her crew try to make their way to help get the exorcists, Lena Lee, Miranda Lotto, all of them to Edo, but it's this terrible moment where her and her crew end up dying, all except one of their youngest people, which is Chao Han, who he starts off as a fun character, but he goes in some pretty dark direction. We see the setup of the Noah's Ark, which is like this spatial travel device, allowed the Noah gathered in Edo to be with the Earl, and hundreds of Akuma are called to Edo, and once the exorcists finally reach Edo, you see that Edo is completely wiped out. We're talking salted earth. There is nothing there. It is really messed up. But Alan gets a new power-up called Crown Clown, which becomes like the legendary second version of his ability, especially going forward. But as the Noah, I think, go to leave, Alan, Lena Lee, Lavi, Kanda, Kurori, and Chozi Han end up boarding the Ark in order to confront the Noah. And then you get one of the more fun arcs, the Noah's Ark arc, where the various different Noah face off with the members of the Black Order in these head-to-head battles, very similar to that anime trope where it's just like, I'll battle this character, you go on ahead. I'll battle this character, you go on ahead. It's some fun showdown. You got Skin Boltic going up against Yu Kanda. Skin is one of the tougher ones of the Noah, and Skin is the first of the Noah to fully die. Just die. He's dead. You got the Jazz Dev twins who take on Alistair Crowley, and Crowley unlocks a new ability. We get this awesome rematch between Alan and Tiki Mick, which, deeply leaves Tiki Mick very scarred afterwards. It is some intense stuff that goes down. It is a knockdown, drag-out fight, but elsewhere, Cross Martin is found and returns to the Black Order of his own accord, so it makes a lot of the searching that Alan had done almost kind of pointless to a certain degree, but Alan wasn't going to be embroiled in the battle regardless. Chozi Han is found that he is able to take on Innocence in and of himself, and I think he gets it within his hands or something like that. During the various battles, Lavi and Kanna's weapons are utterly shattered. Alan ends up meeting with the 14th Noah, who he doesn't know who he is, but Alan finds that he's able to control the Ark for some reason, an ability that should only be possible for Noah. And because of that, the Ark is able to fall into the hands of the Black Order, which absolutely infuriates the Earl and leads to some serious repercussions down the line. And that's when you get the invasion of the Black Order arc, as Lulubelle comes in to infiltrate the Black Order and just starts decimating the Black Order. So many characters end up dying. It is a really unfortunate situation, as we lose a good amount of the more lesser known characters, but at the same time, it's some sad stuff. You've gotten to know a lot of these characters for, in the anime, it's almost 100 chapters. In the manga, it's over 125 chapters. You've known these characters for a while, and to see some of them go out the way they do, it is... Ugh. It was after this that the series kind of went into a little bit of a hiatus. The artist, I still don't know exactly what's been going on with her personally. Like, I'm not exactly sure if she's just stepped away from it, or if it was medical issues, or if she's having some kind of complications. But D.Gray-man started coming out very sporadically around this point, and it was after this that its series started coming out very slowly over the next 10 or so years. Because in that time, you had very more minor story arcs. Like the first 5 or more years of the anime, of the manga, went by pretty fast, but the last 10 years of the manga, it's been slow going. We did get the disappearance of Cross Martin arc, as they end up moving their headquarters after everything that happened, and then Cross Martin ends up going missing all of a sudden. We have this Phantom Thief G arc where Kanda ends up being introduced to this boy Timothy, who has this special ability, and all the shenanigans he gets into. We have the Artificial Exorcist arc, where we learn a little bit more of the background about Kanda and just how wrong the Black Order really can be. Like, there's some really effed up stuff that the Black Order does that once you hear about it, it's just like you start to trust the Black Order less and less at this half of the series. Then you get the Seed of Destruction arc, because Alan helps out Kanda and an old friend of Kanda's named Alma, and the shaky situation around there. Alma is experimented on and had went through all this stuff, and so did Kanda, and Kanda came out on the other side okay. Alma ends up coming out as basically almost Nakuma, more or less, but fueled by innocence. It's a complicated situation. But because Alan helps them out, he's taken into custody by the Black Order, and he started being treated as a Noah, because the Black Order starts to feel like they can't trust him. And some weird cardinal that you find out is this innocent being called Apocryphos, who tries to end Alan because he is a Noah, and he ends up being rescued by Tiki-Miken Road because he's part Noah, and it was so complicated, because it becomes a question, who do you trust, Apocryphos or Tiki? Because Tiki-Miken Road are trying to save Alan. Apocryphos is trying to end Alan, but do you really want this Noah to resurface inside of Alan with how much power he wields? Link is apparently murdered. We get the backstory of Alan and Mana. Kanda comes back to the Black Order. It's revealed that Lavi's boss Bookman had been captured by the Noah. It's revealed that Apocryphos was the one who came after Cross Martin and why he disappeared. So Alan's being blamed by everything that Apocryphos did. It's revealed that Apocryphos actually wants to merge with Alan for some reason. These being known as the Third Exorcists end up joining the Noah family, so that's a situation. Alan completely leaves with the help of the Ark. Like, so much goes down at this point. And then you get the Search for Alan Walker arc, where the Black Order is hunting down Alan, and Johnny and Kanda try to, find him first beforehand under the guise of trying to take him down, but it's obvious that they're actually trying to help out, as Apocryphos is also hunting Alan. You find out that Link Howard is still alive and is also hunting down Alan. Alan is slowly becoming more and more possessed by the 14th Noah, who is apparently Nay Campbell. So that's a whole situation, because that was the, brother of Mana, who was the person who took care of Alan all that time ago. And then you end up finding out that the Millennium Earl is one half of Nay somehow, Nay and Mana. It's a weird situation. Tim Campy ends up being destroyed by Apocryphos, who is just trying to cover his tracks at every corner. Howard Link starts to realize that Apocryphos is behind a lot of things. Link ends up allying with the 14th for some reason, more or less to just figure things out, I think. For some reason, the 14th wants to kill the Earl, despite the fact that they are one being to some degree, but I think it's because the 14th was ultimately betrayed, and they tried to kill him first, only for Alan and Johnny to be captured by Tidal and Kanda. And this was the point where the manga full on went into full-scale hiatuses. I'm still waiting to see more of what happens going forward. And I don't know, the manga started to really kind of get a little bit confusing in what it's trying to tell, because the revelation that the Earl is a combination of Mana and Nei. So Nei is possessing Alan, whereas Mana would have to be the current Earl. But that raises the question of how that's possible, as Mana had raised Alan, and Alan was met by the Earl, who had suggested to Alan that he bring Mana back as a Akuma. And we saw Alan, he has that curse mark over his eye that allows him to see the true form of Akuma. And that really just raises the question of what is the Earl, what is Mana, and what is Nei? Like, what's the situation there? Because stuff previously established in the series is now heavily being contradicted. And I'm kind of at a loss, because while the series isn't bad by any means, it's really started to kind of just contradict itself left and right with the whole Earl, Mana, and Nei situation. So if anybody understands where that's going, please tell me. Because, like, it would be one thing if Nei had been the one to raise Alan. He ended up dying. Alan tried to bring him back as an Akuma. Alan destroyed that Akuma, and then he got reincarnated within Alan's body along those terms. But no, it was Mana. So was there like a third persona? Was it just the visage of the Earl or something like that? I'm really at a loss. But I really do love this series. I still appreciate it and care for it. It's just that it just hasn't been given enough time to just establish itself and keep going. And I really am wondering if Hoshino actually plans on continuing this story, because I have to assume that it's been a health situation, because Hoshino hasn't been involved in too much, and I heard she had health issues beforehand. But man, I gotta kind of hope for the best for her at this point, because at this point the manga might never be finished, and the author's health is more important than some manga at the end of the day. It's just unfortunate. I wish they could find someone who can imitate their art style well enough that they could do things remotely, and maybe just work on the script and release things periodically instead of a full-scale end. But maybe the illness is worse than what I assume it is. If so, that's really unfortunate. But hey, tell me your thoughts on D.Gray-man. Are you looking forward to one day it coming back and maybe reaching a conclusion that we can all be happy with? Or do you think it might just be better to just call it done and move on with our lives? Now, maybe the author just isn't going to have the health to be able to go back to it, which is sad, but ultimately if she's having these many complications, it might just be for the best. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.